Throughout history, freethinkers have outraged the religious with their wacky ideas about the virtues of free speech, reason, and of course, eating babies. Now, God is dying, and it's time to dispose of his remains. From the pits of hell, Satan sends two puppets of the imperialist West and the Zionist Jews against God, Islam, and tiny kittens to bring you their propaganda and conspire for a new world order. This is Secular Jihadists for a Muslim Enlightenment with Ali Rizvi and Armin Navabi.
Welcome, everybody, to another episode of Secular Jihadists for a Muslim Enlightenment. My name is Ali Rizvi, and with me is my co-host, Armin Navabi. Armin, how are you? And we're actually really, we've been looking forward to this episode for quite a while, and a lot has happened since since we initially booked it. So we have a very, very special guest. We're going to start with the story of Asia Bibi, which many of you have heard about in the news. So Asia Bibi is a Christian woman. She's a poor Christian woman who lived in Pakistan, and she was accused of blasphemy. And in Pakistan, the blasphemy law in Pakistan requires very, very severe consequences for people who are accused of blasphemy. So she was immediately charged. She was put in jail around 2010. And then the governor of the largest province of Pakistan at the time, the province of Punjab, whose name was Salman Taseer, he stood up for her. And he went and he stood by her, and he thought that the ruling was unjust and her imprisonment was unjust. As a consequence, he was assassinated by his bodyguard. So the governor of the largest province in Pakistan was assassinated by his bodyguard for standing up for a poor Christian woman who was charged with blasphemy. The bodyguard who assassinated him ultimately became a hero, and still is in a lot of ways. Millions of people, when he was ultimately executed, millions of people came out to his funeral to celebrate him. There are shrines in his honor, and then this is essentially the assassin of the governor, Salman Taseer. Recently, Asia Bibi was acquitted by the Supreme Court, and suddenly it's in the news again. The Islamic fundamentalists who want her blood, they want her to be hanged, executed, are coming out into the streets, and there has been a lot of turmoil recently in Pakistan. So to talk about this and more, we actually we're honored to have on our show today my friend, Shan Taseer. Shan is the son of Salman Taseer, who's a governor who was unfortunately assassinated for standing up for Asia Bibi. Shan, welcome to the program, and thank you for joining us.
Ali and Armin, thank you so much for inviting me. It's a pleasure, it's an honor, and I am extremely humbled by your very kind words.
Oh, the same here. And obviously you've already been through so much with this in the past, and now a lot of it is being dredged up again. It's all over the news. It's obviously good news that Asia Bibi was acquitted. What is going on? I know that you're very close to the story. You've been following it. Can you give us an update about what's happening with the situation right now? I know that she was actually released from prison recently. There was a rumor that she's being thrown out of the country. The government is disputing that rumor. So what is happening right now with the case?
Well, as we speak right now, she is in the country. And
she's in Pakistan.
Yes, she's in Pakistan, and she and her family are due to fly out soon, very soon. The delay is simply logistical reasons. People have to pack. They need visas. They need passports. You can't get a passport made when you're in prison. These processes start when you're out of prison. She came out of prison yesterday. So she is still in Pakistan, but not for long. Soon she will leave Pakistan because it's not an option for her to be in Pakistan.
Right. Her lawyer has already left, right?
Yes, her lawyer has left for exactly the same reason that she has left. I mean, it's if once you make your bed in issues like this, you don't have a future in a country, in the Pakistan of 2018, you don't have a future. You don't have much of a life expectancy. It's very clear why her lawyer has left. The judges that acquitted her are probably going to spend the rest of their lives in high security. And Asia, of course, has to leave immediately, as does her family.
How is she doing? Do you know at all about her?
Yes. Very high spirits, very happy. Incredulous initially, because you have to understand that you and I get a lot of news in the outside world. Now, for a woman in solitary confinement, knew very little. And her only communication was with her husband every 2 weeks, her husband and her daughter. And you have to understand that these people are absolutely illiterate. They are from the lowest rung of society in terms of literacy or economic position in society. So
right.
they are very limited in terms of how they comprehend the situation and are following a situation. So for them, after 9 years of despondency, suddenly the news came, oh, you're free. And it's very touching what her remarks were after that. They were along the lines of, really? What? I'm free? You mean I can leave? What?
Yeah.
And those were, that's probably the most touching bit I heard, because that was truly a person who was incredulous. It was a person who had resigned themselves to solitary confinement and despondency for the rest of their life, and suddenly there was, what? Free?
How was your? I know that your father, when he went and he supported her and he stood by her.
Yeah.
He must have known that he was going to get a lot of opposition. But did he? Yeah. Do you think he ever thought that he would lose his life for it?
Look, of course. In Pakistan, there is no doubt that once you come near these issues, then the centigrade goes up. Then suddenly it's not funny anymore. Yeah. And he knew and understood Pakistan very, very well. In fact, I used to run a TV channel with him, and sort of memories come back when this happened. I remember it happened more than once that he called me up very angry, saying, "What is this that you've put on?" This is going back to the cartoon riots back in 2000 and what was it, 2005?
The Danish cartoon riots. Cartoons, right.
So I'd done some heavy criticism of it, and he called me up quite annoyed, and he said, "Look, you have to be careful." And I said, "Why?" And he sort of gave me this huge sort of lecture about, I understand Pakistan better than you. And when I sort of look back at that, obviously, so this was a man who understands the country very well. But the big question that I suppose you're getting to is, why did he do it? He was okay. My father was a child of his time. He was a child of the 60s. He was the 1968 generation. It was a generation that wanted to bring in a new world. As a student, he protested the Vietnam War in London. In his entry into politics was to oppose General Zia-ul-Haq. So his first entry into politics was in opposition, and not a democratic opposition, but opposition to a strong, brutal military dictatorship. So he entered politics, going to jail. He himself went to solitary confinement in the Lahore fort. And he used to write us letters from jail, and he was deeply ideological and believed that a man has to take a stance for what he believes in, because that is what is most precious to what he will take. So when he was governor and saw this happen, it was very clear for him morally the rights and wrongs, how unjust it was, and he found it unconscionable to stay quiet. And I also want to say that his education was deeply, not his education, his entire outlook on the world was deeply humanist, deeply secular. We were brought up on the poetry of Ghalib, on the poetry of Faiz.
Oh.
These are sort of progressive poets from Pakistan who were about third world nationalism. They were about social justice.
And they were actually quite like Mirza Ghalib and Faiz Ahmed Faiz were, a lot of their poetry is actually quite pro-secular, quite fiercely almost, I know that a lot of Pakistani atheists really like them.
It's
almost heretic.
How popular are these in Pakistan?
Oh, huge, they're icons. And all the songs
deeply popular. Yes.
So secular thoughts are still very popular among a lot of Pakistanis.
Among poetry for sure.
Well, our part of the world has a very deeply secular tradition. In fact, I think what's new is this mad, rabid fundamentalism of the type we're seeing today. There have been strains of secular thought in the subcontinent. Of course, these have coexisted with strains of fundamentalist thought as well. But the subcontinent is not new to progressivism, to progressive ideas. In fact, even if you go well before Ghalib, before the Urdu language was crafted, back to approximately even as far back as the 13th and 14th century, you get from a lot of Sufist poetry a very secular worldview that you would recognize today as absolutely humanist.
But so when did the problem start? Isn't Islam one of the only countries, if not the only countries, that its entire existence is based on Islam?
Oh, that's a huge question. And by the way, that's the subject of another podcast. But I disagree because just briefly speaking, no, because Pakistan was built to protect the rights of a minority. It wasn't built for Islam. It was built for a minority which was different from a majority and feared a majorityist domination.
Which minority and majority?
Minority being Muslim, majority being Hindu. So there was a minority which was looking to secure its rights. That is what led to the demand for a separate constitutional solution, which eventually became a demand for a separate country.
Yeah. A lot of people actually, I think even Muhammad Ali Jinnah, the founder of Pakistan, he's got several quotes where he sort of says that Pakistan really was a state that was created from Muslims out of necessity rather than a state based on Islam, the religion. And he himself was sort of an Ismaili who eventually became, it just seemed to be.
But isn't the fact that the laws, even these judges right now, for example, that said, oh, there's no evidence for blasphemy and they acquitted her and now she gets to go free. Basically, when they say there's no evidence, that means that if there was an evidence based on the laws of the country, she would be executed for blasphemy. These are the laws of a country of Pakistan.
Yes.
Isn't so? The laws of this country is based on Islam. Doesn't that give credibility to people that are saying that this is a country based on Islam, based on Islamic thought, based on Islamic law, and everything has to pass the Islamic test before it becomes acceptable?
Look, yes and no. Islamic laws were introduced into the country. These laws that you're talking about, the blasphemy laws, were introduced into the country in the 1980s. They didn't exist before that. But like I said, these strains, secular as well as fundamentalist strains, have coexisted in a strange symbiotic managed hypocrisy with each other, and that's part of the character of the subcontinent. It has never had an outwardly secular personality and has not had an outwardly fundamentalist personality either. But obviously, certain strains have become more powerful because of external events, like a war led to the necessity of a dictator. So there have been political events, but both strains have existed.
Even the name, the Islamic Republic of Pakistan, even that didn't come in until many years after its founding. When was it? 19 what? Yeah, 56. So about 10 years later, almost 10 years later.
I could be wrong, but I think Islamic Republic came in 1973. That was
you may be right.
ZAB.
And the live chat is saying the constitution was based on Islam since 1962.
Right.
1950.
Just for reference, Pakistan was founded in 1947. So what we're talking about, all of these developments and the Islamization, the further, I guess, Islamization of Pakistan. Obviously, the launching pad was that it's a state for Muslims. So in that way, it probably lent itself to a more receptive environment for these Islamic sort of introductions. But at the same time,
so given that it was, given that it was a state for Muslims, and then eventually, because it was a state for Muslims, it turned into an Islamic state. Do you think that it was doomed to fail from the beginning? That the Islamic forces were eventually, like, it seemed like the Islamic forces are going to defeating any kind of demand for secularism that might exist in Pakistan. Isn't that the case?
Well, I don't think it was inevitable, but it's been a global phenomena since 1979. There have been geopolitical forces which have preferred or preferenced Islamic regimes all over the Muslim world. I mean, starting with Iran, all over the GCC, Pakistan. There were a lot of geopolitical necessities, the demands of superpowers fighting across the border. Those superpowers obviously would prefer a strong man in power as opposed to a messy democracy, which democracies always are, and for a strong man to justify his rule, the easiest resort is Islam. The thing is that religion always comes to the aid of dictators and autocrats. It's an inherent design flaw in religion that it is up for abuse for authority. It is something that lends itself to cementing authority.
Right. So, it may not even be a flaw. It actually may be
by design.
The actual intention of it.
Yeah, it could be a design feature, actually.
For the Abrahamics, actually, I think that was the purpose. The purpose was very overtly political, if you look at it. But anyway, continue.
Yeah. So basically, political events have been largely responsible for this. Now, could it have gone the other way? Of course it could. I mean, many things could have gone separately. India and Pakistan could have not had such a strained relationship from 1947, which has also been largely the cause of a lot of extremism on both sides, which is defining each other in opposition to the other. So therefore, both countries appealing to their essentially the ugliest side.
But the difference seems to be in especially in Pakistan and in Bangladesh compared to other Islamic countries. It seems the other Islamic countries, it seems like the main source of forcing Islam on the rest of the population, the source of that is mostly the government. If you look at Iran or if you look at Saudi Arabia. But when you look at Pakistan and Bangladesh, it seems like there's such a popular demand from the people when it comes to forcing Islam on the rest of the population, that even the government's hands are being forced based on the population's demand for forcing Islam. So that seems to be the difference.
Yeah, but even that is the outcome of 40 years of a very deliberate domestic policy to create that. Right. Now, Pakistan currently has about 30,000 madrasahs. Now, what are these madrasahs? These are basically indoctrination and recruitment factories for indoctrinating youth who are going to be willing to become Soviet gunship fodder. Now, why does a young man sort of sign up to become Soviet gunship fodder? Religion again comes to the aid of such things. So basically, Pakistan has developed with of course American and Saudi money has developed a very large network of madrasahs. Now, what's a madrasah? A madrasah is an institution that brainwashes a person and makes him useful only for jihad, nothing else, or for being a prayer leader. Teaches him nothing else. Just teaches him the Quran, and that's it.
And just a note for the audience that even the word Taliban, which means students, is a plural for talib, which means student, and it came from the madrasahs. The madrasahs were where all these students were, and that's how the Taliban essentially were created. But sorry, Shaan. Sorry.
And this is all Iran's fault, isn't it? Like this whole Saudi Arabia's funding of madrasahs in Pakistan was a response of the Saudi government to Iran's spread of its own version of Shia Islam around the Middle East. That's why this was after 1979's Iran Revolution, when Saudi Arabia started investing in madrasas in Pakistan. And I remember the numbers of madrasa before the Iran Revolution and after the Iran Revolution in Pakistan astronomically skyrocketed.
Yes.
Yeah.
It was interesting because at that time, this is where the U.S. and Saudi Arabia aligned, because the U.S. wanted to fight a war against the godless, atheistic Soviets, and the Mujahideen, which is, the people who waged jihad, were heroes to the Reagan administration at the time. And the Saudis, meanwhile, wanted to do their whole, Shia versus Sunni after the revolution with Iran disarmament, saying they wanted to do that. And both of them pretty much aligned in their purpose that way. So it was By
the way, we got a super chat from Abdullah Samir in the live chat. Thank you so much, Abdullah.
Thank you, Abdullah. Abdullah's a previous guest. Obviously, he was brilliant in that last show, so make sure you check it out. But Shaan, so go on with what you were saying.
And then
let's get back to
that. And then how did that get to the because we want to get to the blasphemy laws.
So basically, then you had this evil dictator in the 1980s, and his only sort of dictatorship. How do you justify dictatorship? Classic again. Religion comes to the aid of this. That I'm doing God's work. I'm doing God's work. I'm bringing Islam to these people. It's a religious duty. Next to us is Afghanistan. It's a religious duty. So what do you need? You need Islamic law. Basically, he came in with an agenda to Islamize the country. And this horrible law, the blasphemy law, is part of the legacy of that. But I just want to, as a side note, say something very interesting that I saw from checking out the Pew polls. The famous Pew poll of 2013 that where basically they took the view of Muslims all over the Muslim world. It's something that your friend Sam Harris quotes a lot. There's a lot we can get out of there, but something really interesting came out of the Pew poll, which is that, interestingly, people who are most inclined to wanting Sharia law, i.e., people who are most, basically most sort of favoring of an Islamic state, were countries that have been subject to an Islamic rule, such as Pakistan, Afghanistan, Egypt to some extent, Iraq. Point being that you would think that if you have if you have an unhappy alliance, or if you have an unhappy Islamic regime in your country for many, many decades, you will want to change. That's what an optimistic view of mankind would tell you. Sadly, it seems to be the opposite. That if you have been in a very Islamic regime for a long time, Saudi Arabia being another example, you will then crave more Islamic law. So it's a Stockholm syndrome, or it just shows that brainwashing works eventually.
It doesn't work.
I think it's a moralizing thing.
But I don't want to. Somebody in the live chat said Persians want to make everything about Persians, but I have to do it again. I don't. But it didn't. That's not this case in Iran. Like, the demand for an Islamic government has significantly dropped since the Islamic Revolution. To the point that obviously not all. There's still a lot of people there that want an Islamic government, but the hatred towards not just an Islamic government but also to Islam as a whole has increased significantly in Iran. So much so that even some of the, I think, alt-right people in the United States would be shocked about the level of hatred that some young people have for Islam in Iran. So in Iran, at least, an Islamic government has reduced the demand for an Islamic government significantly in the past.
Are there polls to suggest that, or are you saying that based on your observance of perhaps
no? I mean,
you observe certain things more than others. Well, there data to suggest that?
No. So this is a hypothesis, not a theory, but almost it would be so shocking if this is not true, because everyone's observation, people's experience before the revolution. I mean, even before the revolution, the amount of jokes and the amount of hatreds and the amount of ridicule of Islam that is so common in Iran today was unheard of before the revolution. It's so common these days in Iran. So obviously there's no, this is why it hasn't graduated.
But is it common in mainstream Iran, or is it common in a small section of
like in Iran, etc.? I think from what I know is that generally a lot of the like, for example, the Iran deal that the U.S. and those European countries came up with, it was premised on this idea that these countries had, that Iran is a place that if you buy time, eventually, the youth is going to rise. There are cracks in the clerical establishment. It's going to come down, and it will be something. The Iranian populace is the most pro-Western Muslim populace.
I don't want to make this about Iran. I just want to question that. Question whether that's always the case. But let's go back to Pakistan. Sorry.
Yeah, let's go back. Yeah, let's do that. We're going. This is a lot of fun.
Where all the fun is, huh?
Yeah, this is the fun. So we're gonna going on tangents. So yes. So let's go back to this. So we have you were talking about the development of Pakistan. I think you were talking about your father and how he grew up in the 60s, and that's actually a really good point, because my father grew up around the same time. Marxism was a very big thing. People were exploring communism, and they were exploring Western. There were a lot of these discussions about it.
It's a generation that empowered sexual choice, gender equality. Did away with racism. Finally, sort of did away with racism from the mainstream. This is a generation that actually believed in social justice.
So what was the reason? I know that there's some, it's interesting. Zulfikar Ali Bhutto came out very famously as a socialist. A lot of the, the issues that came out, the banning of alcohol, the sort of official demonization of Ahmadis, a lot of that happened during his time. So even for somebody like that who was known to be very, very secular, there was some sort of temptation or some sort of idea, some sort of lure in allying with Islamic fundamentalists and appeasing them to some extent. I feel that a lot of the current thing that we're seeing there in Pakistan was sort of a downward spiral that started with that, a little bit of appeasement there. But I don't know. What do you think about how it all started, the fundamentalism?
No, I think Bhutto dabbled with it, sure. But it's Zia that opened the floodgates.
Yeah, absolutely. But I'm just thinking about some of the laws and why would he dabble? Why did he dabble with it when you have somebody who was so sort of secular, right? In a sense, and he was a socialist, and he was very pro-democratic and all of that. Why did he feel the need to dabble with
political opportunism?
Yeah, that means
that is what people closest to him say. Political opportunism. I mean, he didn't even need to. He was very powerful at the time.
Yeah.
1974. He was almost at the height of his popularity then and power. The bad times hadn't started for him. The opposition to him hadn't really mobilized at that time.
Yeah.
But yet he did it. I think that then also the other theory is that he was trying to signal the Muslim world. Who was it? King Faisal in Saudi Arabia. Islamic summit was going on, so there was some benefits to be had there. So he sort of threw this to the Saudis, that here you are, I give you the Ahmadi head on a platter, give me some money.
Yeah. And so the blasphemy, so Zia comes in, he opens the floodgates, suddenly you have this, this wave of Islamization that is also just accelerated by Saudi money and by American money.
Yeah.
And now you have, these issues with blasphemy. How did it become so popular? The blasphemy law. Why does it have so much support in the Mumtaz Qadri? I'll tell you what. We have people who. I have cousins who live here who moved here about 15 years ago, and when they saw the crowds at Mumtaz Qadri, it was for the audience. Mumtaz Qadri is the name of the assassin of Salman Taseer. When they see the crowds at his funeral, they said that these cousins, they're like, I don't recognize this country anymore, and these are moderate Muslim people. They just said that I don't recognize these millions of people. How is this happening? Why are they celebrating this guy? What do you think? What's your assessment?
Did we mention that there's a shrine for the person that killed him in Pakistan?
Yeah.
More than that, he's acquired not just saint-like status, but he's almost become like this messiah that's coming back. I mean, like these folklore legends about people claim to have seen him arisen from his grave. So like it's this new cult around him is forming, almost fetishizing him and fetishizing the prophet. So he's become hugely popular. But to go back to your question, Ali, sort of why? I mean, see, any law that sort of tells you that religion is under attack. So basically, it's 295C, which is the 800-pound gorilla in this cage in religious laws. Zia instituted many religious laws, but the big 800-pound gorilla, the sort of 44 Magnum, the big guy on the block is 295C. Now, basically, what does 295C do? It essentially tells you that your religion is under attack. Look out. If anyone does this, he should be murdered. So it's basically putting a suggestion in someone's mind to start looking for attacks on religion. And it's a law which is designed to inflame passions. That's a design feature in it. It's designed for that.
How so?
Okay. Interestingly, very few people actually know the law. So let's talk about the law. Let's sort of discuss what it's about. It goes something like this. So it says basically that a derogatory remark against the Prophet, whether written or spoken, direct or indirect, intended or unintended.
Oh, unintended. Holy fuck.
Whether through a representation, an imputation. I didn't even know what a bloody imputation is. A representation, an imputation, an innuendo, or an insinuation is punishable by death.
Jesus.
So, Jesus. In fact, not Jesus. So basically, on the one hand, you've got this hugely sort of broad caveats upon caveats upon caveats. So it's like throwing a wide net out to trap someone. Can be interpreted in any way. Like, for example, what is an indirect imputation? Good luck with the courts trying to interpret it, but it will get you killed. It will, is punishable by death.
Why unintended? That's the worst part. Unintended.
Actually, it doesn't say unintended. The word doesn't say the words unintended, but if you add in all the other caveats, it essentially means that if it's said, it's called absolute liability, which is that if it is said the crime has happened, it's got nothing to do with your intention. So it doesn't say the word unintended, but it says all the other. It says imputation, innuendo, insinuation. I mean, really, it was like they're sitting down with a thesaurus. Will get you killed. Is punishable by death. So on the one hand, you've got a very, very vague and very broad definition of blasphemy. And by the way, the law doesn't go on to sort of explain what a derogatory remark is, what an imputation is, what an innuendo could be. So it's sort of left for you to interpret. So it's very, very broad. So that violates every legal principle, because the thing about a law is that you have to know, everyone has to understand what crime they've committed. Here, the crime is not defined. It's just, it's so broad that it can fit any situation. It's completely subjective, completely open to interpretation. So it's vague, and at the same time, the punishment is absolute, death. So basically what is it? It's an instrument of terror. And what has happened with this, that, if you leave the definition so vague, is that over time, courts or people at large, their interpretation becomes broader and broader and broader and broader. So, for example, now, liking the wrong thing on Facebook has become blasphemy.
Oh.
Discussing evolution has become blasphemy.
People, because it's imputation. I mean, it can be anything. You can, I think, you can just fill it in with anything you want.
What's an indirect imputation? Come on, it's got to be that.
Okay, so discussing evolution, like, what if I want to discuss it to say that it's wrong? Like, I don't understand. Like, just
no, it's okay. If you discuss it and say it's wrong, you're okay.
But you have to say what you. So Razib
it only goes one side.
Well, only one side. Okay.
Well, one of our friends and one of our in the live chat, Razib Khan is saying he works in genomics. He's saying imputation means you just fill in by implication. It's a big thing in genomics. So I assume that it probably means not that they have a lot of knowledge of genomics, but still.
So okay, so you were
word is there. Imputation is the word there. Yeah.
You were giving some examples. So
ridiculous examples. There was this person whose name was Muhammad. Right now, his name was Muhammad. Now,
I heard about this.
He wrote his name on a visiting card, went to meet someone looking for business or sort of looking for a job or whatever, and the person who saw his card didn't entertain him and told him to essentially bugger off, and threw his card in the bin. Blasphemy.
What? Why?
The card had Muhammad written on it.
Oh, no.
It's an indirect imputation.
What happened to him?
I don't know exactly what happened in that case, but the blasphemy accusation arrived. I don't know if he made it to, if he got out of it or not, but it was a blasphemy accusation.
Can I insult my friend that his name is Muhammad? Can I tell, like, that asshole Muhammad
No, you can't say that.
I can't, even if it's not
indirect imputation.
Even if it's not referring to the Prophet?
Even if it's an ex-Muslim like Muhammad Sayyid?
No. See, this is what what's that word? This is what absolute liability means. Okay. That it doesn't matter what you intended.
Here's a solution to all Pakistan's problems. Okay, ex-Muslims and everybody, just name everybody, even your daughters, name them Muhammad. They can't kill them. They can't kill them anymore. They can't do anything to them because it's blasphemy if they kill your son. Just name everybody Muhammad.
But the only thing is, the only issue with that, Armin, is that the vagueness of this isn't in just the offense, but it is in how the offense is perceived. So it really comes down to, the way that they will perceive it. They will decide if there's something they don't like. Like, honestly, if the same argument that Asia Bibi argument was over a cup of water, right, where she was drinking water and a bunch of Muslim women didn't want her to drink, and this is a common thing. They don't want Christians to drink from the same cup as them. I saw this.
It's a cultural thing. I mean, it happens in India also. You don't.
Yeah, it happens everywhere.
You have untouchables.
But they don't want to drink the cup. But in India, they don't execute them after because something offensive.
Oh no!
No. They're pretty bad there too.
But not to this level. I mean, come on.
Yes.
In Pakistan, I mean, India is bad, but Pakistan.
India is the world's leading capital of mob lynching. By the way, beats Pakistan hands down.
But the thing with in either way, Shaan, I mean, in this case, this was obviously a very, very severe situation, which is why it's such an international headline, right? So she did this. And if it was another Muslim woman maybe fighting with the same Muslim women, you may never have heard of this situation. But a lot of the reason that it happened was because they perceived this to be blasphemy because of who this person was. She was a Christian. She said certain things. So it's not just a matter of that the offense itself is vague. There may be loads of people committing this offense of blasphemy according to the wording of the law across Pakistan, but at the moment it is somebody that you don't like, it basically gives you an excuse to target somebody. It's
well,
a tool
it's
for
a
the
naked,
mobs, right?
it's a Damocles sword. It's
Well,
not,
what you said,
not be applied evenly. It's a Damocles sword that can fall on anyone's head. So
Yeah.
it's not like, I mean, you can't ask why would you accuse this person of this crime and not someone else,
Right.
because it's absolutely, see, a law like this cannot by definition be applied consistently. It just depends on who was unlucky enough to be accused, because the other thing is that the accusation is where the fun begins.
Mm.
I mean, it doesn't matter after that sort of what the facts were. The accusation has been made is when the moral panic begins.
Right.
So wouldn't the solution to be just to go and accuse all the imams and all the people, like all these leaders of the people that want blood for blasphemy? Just go like spread accusations against them for blasphemy. Just like accuse everybody until it doesn't mean anything. I don't know.
No, I don't know. One wouldn't take one seriously if you know.
Yeah,
It would have
the
to be
point.
a certain
I
type
mean,
of.
if everybody accuses everybody of blasphemy, like as a response, like then it might lose its power. You know how racism.
You know, I hope we come to that place where, you know, we can own it. You know, like if there's a slur, that an unfair slur that someone has against you, which is more demeaning to them than you, then you can own it, and it'll be more humiliating to them, to the person who gave that slur. I hope we come to that point. In fact, I'm going to make a note of that. Yeah.
So here's a. By the way, before I ask this question, somebody mentioned in live chat. I have to mention this. If you ask me if there's a poll for Iran, there was a government poll that showed that 50% of women in Iran don't want mandatory hijab. 50%. That's huge.
Oh, that's no big deal. No. If you look at the Pew poll, they've also got that should hijab be forced on women or should it be their choice? And it's there's well over 50% people who say that it should be a woman's choice.
I know that.
So they're not thinking clearly when they answer those questions.
I understand that, but a lot of people's perception of Iran is that most people support government. You know, most people. At least we have some hard data that shows that most people don't support the government's mandatory hijab.
Yeah.
I'm not saying it's a big deal or not. I'm just saying there is some data to back it up. Going to the question regarding blasphemy. A lot of Muslims say that are against the blasphemy laws in Pakistan. They say this is not Islam. This has nothing to do with Islam. This is un-Islamic. This is people change Islam to benefit their own political agenda. Lakum dinakum waliyadin, you know, to each their own religion. What would you say to that?
Ali, what do you say to that? I want to hear your opinion on that.
Well, I think it's pretty clear. I think that overall blasphemy has not just been it's not just a part of Islam. I mean, it is absolutely undeniably a part of Islam. I mean, it's if you look at it, whether you look at it from even sort of even liberal and generous interpretations of the Quran, or if you look at the Hadith, it's part of it. It's actually part of all the Abrahamic religions. So in Leviticus 24:16, you go in, it says whoever blasphemes should be put to death. It actually says it even much more clearly than it does in Islamic scripture. So yes, I think it is Islamic. I think there are a lot of terrible things that have roots in Islamic scripture and Islamic doctrine.
Can I answer? Can I say what I say is that there is actual hadith, authentic Sahih hadith supporting blasphemy laws. There's some of the most famous ones is when Muhammad came back to Mecca, and a lot of people say that that conquest was completely without spilling a single person's blood, but that's not true. According to the hadith, Muhammad had a list of poets that made fun of him, and those were supposed to be killed, and they were killed because they made fun of Muhammad. So that is according to hadith. There are some hadiths that Muhammad asked people that who's gonna like defend me. This person is like speaking against me. Who's gonna kill him for me? So there's a lot of hadith supporting killing people that have insulted the Prophet. So it is based on Sahih Hadith.
Yeah, but then how do you match that up with that famous story of the woman who sort of threw her
garbage? The garbage from the rooftop?
Daily compost.
That's actually that's based on hadith. That is actually not sahih. In fact, not only it's not sahih, it's based on Islamic scholars. It's proven to be fabricated.
Oh, come on!
Yeah. No. But Armin, no,
don't say that.
No, this is in a lot of the seerah of Muhammad.
I've heard about this so much. It's generally accepted.
No, it is accepted among people, but it's not sahih hadith. So it's not.
No, it may not be sahih hadith, but it's also it is part of the seerah of Muhammad, right?
No, but the thing is, okay, but the seerah is not considered part of canon. The only part of Islamic canon is the Quran and Sahih Hadith, and the garbage part is not Sahih Hadith. This Muhammad telling people
why does Sahih have the sort of franchise out on Is he like the higher authority more than everyone else? What's a Sahih Hadith? Sorry, my ignorance.
Okay, Sahih. So Shias and Sunnis have different sources of Hadith, but they all have a method of figuring out which Hadiths are authentic and not. Sahih. So Sahih just basically means authentic according to Islam, right? So Sahih.
No, Sahih was a guy.
No.
Sahih Bukhari.
No. Sahih. It's also Sahih Muslim. There's Sahih. Like it's considered authentic. It's a title.
It's the Bukhari is the person. You have Sahih Muslim and Sahih Bukhari. Bukhari and Muslim.
I never knew that. I never knew that. I'm so happy to hear that.
I have Hadith Bukhari here right with me. I go through the Hadith.
Like a good little atheist boy.
But I want to go. I want to go back to. No, but Shaan, another thing I want to say is that blasphemy. It would actually be surprising if blasphemy was not a part of the political religions like Abrahamic religions. And if you look at any kind of...
Let's give the devil its due, okay? It's not in the Quran. Fine. So you have to delve into the hadith, right? And like Armin just said, he's given examples, poets, whatever that, I'm not an expert there, but I do know that it's murky enough to be able to construct a counter-argument. Because you know about the woman, right?
When it comes to the Quran, Armin, when it comes to the Quran.
60,000-foot view, and I know that there's a story here, there's a story there, and it's only the hadith, right? Now the hadith is like this secondary authority. But the big thing, the Quran does not say that. So there's an argument to be made there.
No, Armin, he's right. Like in the Quran itself, compared to, say, like where the Old Testament, where it says very clearly in Leviticus that the blasphemer should be put to death. In the Quran, there's certainly parts where you can look at it and say, okay, I better not blaspheme. But it doesn't overtly have a blasphemy declaration it does.
It does say that fight them, until all religions are for Islam and stuff like that. But
that's open to fight them.
But the thing is that you're saying the Quran is the main source. The thing is that the Quran doesn't have that many commandments. When it comes to Islam and how to live and what to do, 95% of the source of everything in Islam is hadith. Without the hadith, everything you as Muslims know about what to do, how to pray, when to fast, about Hajj, all of that will go away. So Muslims will say you can't just throw out the hadith like that. Without the hadith, 4 of the 5 pillars of Islam will go away without the hadith.
Shaan, here's an example of some of the things. Here are some examples of some things that are actually not in the Quran, that are in the Hadith, that are universally accepted. Circumcision is one of them. The stoning to death for adultery is something that's accepted. That's not mentioned in the Quran. The thing against sodomy and anal sex, for instance. Even Hajj, so there are many. Or the 5 times a day praying.
In the Quran? Are you serious? I never knew that. Hajj is not in the Quran.
Nobody would know what to do with any of these things.
There is no praying 5 times a day is not in the Quran. That's not there. It's only 2 times. So the thing is that
So the
Hadith does. So what we're saying is that I know where you're coming from. There are a lot of moderate Muslims who think that, okay, hadith is secondary. It's not infallible like the Quran. So we can disregard it based on that's a better way for us to have a dialogue, because when we talk about hadith, we can at least criticize it, unlike the Quran. But but what happens is that they don't. A lot of times they don't realize that for the people who we are actually concerned about, that tactic is not as effective. And this is something I used to do too. I went through a phase where I was a Quran-only Muslim in a way. And, there are 5 or 6 places in the Quran that it says that, that this is a book fully detailed. This is a book that's complete. You don't need anything else besides this book. So I used to use those as a way to disregard all of the hadith. But unfortunately, it would be wonderful if everybody else thought that way, but they don't. So,
or you can just tell them to just don't believe in fairy tales and just look at evidence for what you believe in. That's an easier argument. But that's
no, but I just want to sort of like up the bar over here, which is that you're saying that you're questioning whether the blasphemy is sanctioned in Islam or not. I just want to sort of up the bar here and say, okay, I give it to you. Let's say it is. Let's say the first opening line of the Quran is a verbatim, exact Arabic translation of the law, as we said. Imputation and innuation and innuendo, and the sort of Arabic words for all of that.
Yeah.
And so let's say there was no doubt that, and the Quran opened with this and said, hey guys, this is, where it begins. This is like commandment number 1. You will sort of like extinguish anyone who thinks a bad word against the Prophet. And so let's say that was indisputable. Okay. I say even then, you give me divine command theory. If it is clear that it's a commandment which lacks compassion, lacks reason, is unfair, is illogical, is counter to the world we live in, is counter to the basic tenets of a nation state. Are you telling me that I can't question it? And more than that, if after everything that mankind has been through after the Enlightenment and everything that we know about the moral universe after Victor Hugo and after Rousseau, are you telling me that we should live under a law that we can't question, and we should willfully live under a law that we can't question?
Well, I'll be the Muslim
because it's divine command theory. I find that abominable. I find that suggestion.
Okay,
I don't think we could agree with you more. I mean, I'm going to disagree. On the right podcast. I'm going to
be the fundamentalist Muslim here, and I'm going to say to you that how arrogant can you be to think that you know better than God? Yes, of course we can't question God because He's God. He knows. He created the whole universe. Whatever you think it's unreasonable, you're looking at it from your human perspective. Obviously, yes. God knows better what's best for us than you could ever understand.
This is God's word. It's inerrant. It's infallible. How could you challenge it?
Yeah, and if you guys are thinking that this is stupid, makes no sense, but you're looking at it from your human logic perspective, which is a very flawed way of looking at the universe. Obviously, God's know better. That's why we have to listen to it. Even if it seems unreasonable, we have to listen to God's commandment because God knows best. That's their argument. I mean,
that's divine command theory, basically.
Yes, that is. But divine command theory is what the religion is, Shaan. So here's the thing.
Yeah, it is. I give it to you. In fact, divine command theory, because I've worked out 3 counter arguments to the blasphemy law. We'll come to that. Number 1 is divine command theory, right? Which is God said it, and frankly, it's the most honest. Because that's your opponent being absolutely honest. He's not pretending to sort of put a university hat on, and it's only when they pretend to sort of be flying under the false flag of reason. That's when you have a problem with them. Here, I respect them. Okay, so you've got divine command theory. I get where you're coming from, and I can have a discussion with you. But my point is that is really this the best argument for something which is religiously advanced but morally depraved?
Well, it's not an argument, because an argument is based on logic. This is basically saying we can't apply logic because our logic is useless when it comes to God's logic.
Faith. Yeah. Because this is about faith, right? So they can't. Here's the thing. Just generally, whenever you have Middle Eastern dictatorships, for instance, none of those are you allowed to criticize the government. You can't, because when you have somebody who's not enlisting the participation of the people that they're ruling over, right? And it's not a democratic system, then you have to silence them, and you have to make sure that you quash any kind of dissent. Now, the Abrahamic religions, all of them are inherently political, so all of them have blasphemy laws. I mean, Ireland just got rid of its blasphemy law recently. You cannot have a religion like this propagate itself, a religion that's based on faith and hearsay, that is not. Religion, by definition, is not rooted in logic and is not rooted in reason. It's rooted in the idea of faith, believing what someone said before without evidence. Oh, will you take the leap of faith? I'm not giving you any evidence. I can't show you this. You can't see it. You can't hear it. But will you believe? Like that is the essence of religion. But now that kind of thing cannot survive without some kind of blasphemy law. If you have something that is sacred, I mean, we talk about reform, innovation. Now, reform and innovation are great things for us. I mean, they have wonderful connotations as words, but being a heretic or an apostate, those are synonyms for these words, right? But any kind of reform or innovation, by definition, is just heresy when you're in the realm of religion. So that's why I don't think you can. I would like to mix the two worlds. Of course, that's what we do. That's what Armin and I and you and all of us try to do. But for somebody who is actually doing this stuff and takes this stuff seriously and really finds blasphemy offensive, these are you can't have an argument about divine command theory because the topic is divine command theory.
Well, no, because but that's why I think this whole idea of reforming Islam doesn't make any sense, because if you assume God, the argument that I made is correct.
Yeah.
Right? That's why I'm saying you have to go after the whole concept of God, faith, and religion altogether.
Yeah.
Instead of trying
you hit a conversational barrier.
Yeah, I mean, instead of trying to improve Islam, I mean, if there is a God, what the argument that I said is the best argument for what they're saying, and they have a point if there is a God. The point
like I said,
the point is that
the divine command theory is the most difficult one to get through, because there really is a firewall of faith.
Right. So you go after faith rather than trying to play around.
That's exactly. I love the way you have with words. Firewall of faith. That is. That I've always said it. I wrote about it in my book as a conversational barrier. When you're trying to fight in, courts of law in Islamic countries, often you hit this conversational barrier beyond which you can't go, because now you're hitting the infallible word.
Some people in the
firewall of faith. Yeah.
Actually, when you say that, like when you're going after faith and religion, some people in the live chat ask, "Is it safe for you to say these things?"
For me?
Yeah.
Okay. I don't know. I mean, I've made my bed.
Oh, wow.
I mean, safe is like a dot on the horizon on the horizon, essentially. It's a dot. I'm a wajibul qatl. It's a bit late to worry about safe.
What does that mean?
Wajibul qatl means that I should be murdered. That basically there's a ticket on your forehead saying that if you're murdered, then you'll sort of get your ticket to heaven, and it's a duty to be murdered. Essentially,
it's a duty to kill you.
Literally it means liable to be murdered, but essentially it is that this person must be murdered by a believer.
There are millions of people in where you live that think that if they kill you, they will get a ticket to heaven.
Yeah, quite a few million.
Okay, and you're not afraid?
Are you afraid? No, I didn't say I'm not afraid.
Well, okay, that makes sense to be afraid. But
one has to live with it. But honestly, I mean, I just want to ask you, Armin, that of all the sort of negative aspects of religion, have you heard a more disgusting word in a post-enlightenment world than wajibul qatl? How dare someone say that another human being is worthy of being killed?
Wajibul
What a
qatl.
disgusting concept.
Wow.
I mean, what a depraved, horrible, disgusting concept.
Right. So
Wajib
means
mandatory.
needed or mandatory. Qatl means to kill. So mandatory to kill. Jesus.
So as an example, Salman Rushdie, the guy who wrote the Satanic Verses, he was declared wajib al-qatl, mandatory to kill by Imam Khomeini, Ayatollah Khomeini, and then that's why everybody was after him. I always call myself wajib al-qatl. I'm like, it's just mandatory to cuddle me.
Yeah. For you're definitely. I mean, you're a self-declared atheist. I mean, you.
Yeah.
I mean,
but you're living next to them. But we're in Canada. You're living next to the people that want to kill you. That's like I'm scared for you. You should leave.
Yeah.
Can you please leave?
Oh, he's not there. He's not in Pakistan.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, he's not. Yeah. It's okay. So listen. Okay, so let's move on to something else.
Did I say
right
something
now.
I shouldn't have said? Sorry.
No. You didn't say anything. He's just not. But Shaan, let me move on to. So you did these interviews on CNN and BBC. I saw, and a bunch of other outlets. Yeah. And by the way, I told you this before the show, and I've told you this before. You should do that more. I think you're extremely well spoken, and especially when it comes to this topic. So it would be, and obviously you have an audience, right? So I think that you should speak out more and do probably more public speaking as well. But so what you were telling us before we got on the air, is that there was an element of frustration, when you went to these things, that you felt like everybody was pussyfooting around it. So, the whole idea of the blasphemy law. So can you talk about that a little bit?
Okay, just going back a little bit as to what is the blasphemy law. Like I said, I explained to you that when something is so vaguely defined, then when it's interpreted, the interpretation over the years becomes vaguer and vaguer and vaguer. Broader and broader and broader. So the sort of current interpretation of blasphemy is that's got the most currency, is that any criticism of the blasphemy law is blasphemy. That is what they accused my father of. That is what they have accused me of. That's why I'm a wajib al-qatl. So basically that creates a interlocking chain of fear, silence, and censorship in society. So strangely, what we will find is that therefore across society, people will be very, very careful about how they criticize the blasphemy law. There's no criticism of it. There's sort of guarded, piecemeal, sort of insipid criticism, such as, and I heard some government minister say something along the lines of, these miscreants must be punished because they are bringing a bad name to Islam, and essentially criticizing these people for not being Muslim, but not really addressing the issue, which is, let's just talk about what this law is all about, and let's just talk about what's wrong with this law. What we discussed about half an hour ago. I mean, a law which says that, if you so much as dream of criticizing the Prophet, wake up and commit harakiri because it was such a bad thing that you did. That's essentially what, the law brings you to. So when CNN and BBC called me, I was kind of annoyed with the fact that no one is saying it. God damn it. I mean, no one is saying it. In Pakistan, no one is saying it. On foreign media, no one understands it. Like the average person on CNN and BBC, of course, you tell them blasphemy, they understand that, blasphemy is a bad thing and therefore we must oppose it. But no one really knows why.
I mean, blasphemy law.
Blasphemy law is terrible. We must oppose the blasphemy law. And there's an element of just sort of jumping on the right side of the argument for the sake of it. But there's no conversation about what the blasphemy law is, and B, what exactly is wrong with it. So there's a self-censorship in Pakistan for obvious reasons, and there's an ignorance about it around the world. So I think
why do you think there's a hesitation? Because I mean, in the Western world, people are familiar with blasphemy laws. I mean, they've had them. I guess many sort of younger people who haven't studied history, or even older people who haven't studied history, wouldn't know about it. But why do you think there is a sort of hesitation to talk about blasphemy laws, especially when it comes to Islam?
So out in the Western world,
yeah.
No, I don't. There isn't a hesitation. There's just, they just take a, 90,000 foot view of the situation and just say it's bad. But no one talks about why it's bad. It's bad. It wouldn't be so bad if it wasn't so vague. It's let's be honest. It's a ridiculous law. Because any law which is punishing you with death should at least extend the bloody courtesy of telling you what the crime was.
Wouldn't it be still bad even if it was specific? Wouldn't it still be absolutely horrible even if it was like specific? Even if it was clear?
But it wouldn't be as dysfunctional as it is. I mean, you wouldn't be able to apply it to any and every situation. For example, you may not possibly be accused of blasphemy if you've done something as ridiculous as throw a business card into a bin. I mean, this one retailer was accused of blasphemy because he wrote the name of the Prophet Muhammad in, not the prime place in a calendar. So he didn't sort of write it up there in a calendar. He wrote it in an insignificant, yes. He wrote it in a significant place in the calendar. So that is blasphemy. You did not, it was an indirect imputation.
This is going to bite these people. This is going to bite them in their ass because they're gonna get they're bringing the standards for what's blasphemy so low that they themselves are going to be in danger. And if somebody doesn't like them, they're going to at some point, you didn't say your salawat loud enough. You must not like the Prophet. I mean, this is going to come back. I don't know.
But aren't we? So just one thing, Shaan, based on what you're saying, but aren't we? What we're doing is we're talking about these other cases of blasphemy. Isn't this conversation that we're having about this guy throwing the card in the garbage and so on? Isn't this a little bit more about the fact that this may not be blasphemy, rather than what if it was blasphemy? Right? Should it still be punished? You know what I mean?
No, of course. I take the maximalist
when we give those examples. Yeah.
I take the maximalist viewpoint that, in this day and age, in the 21st century, you really want a law that sort of prefers one belief system over another and is happy to kill people for criticizing a certain belief system. Can a society reasonably function with such a law? I say no, it can't.
But is it possible to get rid of it? It seems to be so popular in Pakistan. To even questioning of getting rid of it seems to be impossible. Like the government, based on this Bibi case, the government is even afraid of letting her leave the country. Like they're so intimidated by their own people. The judges that say that she shouldn't be executed are now seem to be in danger of being killed.
Yeah. They're wajibul qatl as well.
Yeah, the military officials are now being called out as maybe they're not Muslim.
They're scared. I think the military is shitting in their pants.
Because, so let's get into that.
There seems to be no hope. I mean, is Pakistan doomed? Is it just going to get worse and worse?
No, but it's inherently an unsteady state. I mean, what? Let's just look at what happens when a blasphemy charge is laid, say in a marketplace. Okay, someone accuses someone of blasphemy in a marketplace, two or three things happen. First of all, it is a charge that by design will sort of inspire the most outrageous emotions in someone. It will sort of inflame their sentiments. First, so that's one thing that happens. The other thing that happens is that it sort of encourages a certain virtue signaling. And there are certain virtues that someone signals by showing that they have uncontrollable rage. If you show that you've got uncontrollable rage, you're basically showing that you're a pious person, because this is seen as virtue. This is seen as virtuous rage for the right reasons. So basically what happens is, and this is not people really losing their shit. This is people indulging in a virtue signaling competition, which is that the more angry you can show, or the more uncontrollable you have become in your anger, the more you are signaling what a good person you are.
What a good Muslim.
And the more you love your prophet.
The more you love your prophet. And this is actually encouraged by religious leaders, right? And my opinion is that there is a natural selection. There's a Darwinian imperative for this, because natural selection has favored people who are willing to resort to violence to defend the tribe, to defend, it's part of an honor culture. Natural selection has, these are male virtues, these are very macho male virtues. If you are willing to resort to extreme violence to defend your tribe, then you're the kind of person that basically is essentially going to see this generation forward.
Well, the other thing is that on top of that,
but I don't know. It seems like most other places have matured above these biological needs, and it seems like Pakistan.
Yeah, of course, that's rule of law. Yeah. But then if you take these three reasons why a mob occurs. Number one, genuine rage at a religious affront. Number two, virtue signaling. And number three, genuine sort of the display of male honor, the display of male martial virtues. Whatever, whichever reason is more than the other, the fact is that it's very easy to get a mob together, which is happy to tear someone to smithereens.
Right. Now, one other thing about the... I was going to say one other thing about the virtue signaling that's very important is that not only do you scream louder to say that you love your prophet, but the people who are not trying to scream louder can be charged with blasphemy themselves, right? So this is where it's a vicious, it's a really vicious cycle. That's a very important component of it. But anyway, go ahead. So you were saying,
but just to point it out, I've seen videos of people like crying about this whole case, about their prophet. Like actually grown men crying and being so desperate for why the justice is not being served. Why is this woman not being killed?
I can bet they knew that the camera was rolling when they were crying.
Yeah, probably.
Right.
Yeah, but get back to you were saying. So you're like these three factors, and it's very easy to get a mob together.
Yeah. So basically, what it does is that it puts together a mob that wants to tear your opponent, whether it's someone you have a financial, economic, business, commercial dispute with, or someone you don't like. You've got a mob which wants to tear him to smithereens. Now that is raw power. It's raw, unchecked power. Obviously, it will occur in a society where the rule of law is weak. I have no doubt that people in England will behave the same way if the law did not prevent people from going to that primal place. It's a human primal place that people will go to. But you have the law in civilized countries. In Pakistan, you have a weak state. So eventually, what it boils down to is that the person making the accusation has raw, unchecked power. And if there's anything we know about human nature, where there is raw, unchecked power will be abused.
I think it's more than just raw unchecked power. I think there's a very powerful meme, which is Islam, that is also feeding into it and encouraging it. I think people are better than that on average. I think people are on average are more sympathetic, or more kind, or more willing to cooperate. I think it's a meme like Islam, which might take advantage of our greatest fears and desires, and make us do things that are not in our best interest.
No, but sure, but that basic. Okay, well, what you've got is a very Rousseau view, and that man is essentially good. I get that, but then a certain breakdown of things can bring people to a primal place where violence is catharsis. What was World War I? Or what were Nazi concentration camps? I mean, the average German is not different. His DNA isn't different from the average Swede or the average.
It was another meme. It was Nazism. It was another powerful meme that took advantage of people's fears and desires. It wasn't just the people. It's a sickness. It's a virus that it either comes in a form of religion or comes in a form of Nazism or other forms that that makes us do things that are not in our best interest. It's not just human nature. It's something it's something like human nature, which is it's a separate evolution beyond our evolution, which is the evolution of memes and their survival.
Yeah. But
the memes are using human beings in order to replicate themselves and survive. Basically, the way that Richard Dawkins originally coined the word meme. It was this is a classical definition of it, the connotation that we're using. So,
or before the word meme came around, I mean, there's standard virus, the Toxoplasma parasite. You know what that is?
Oh, Toxoplasma gondii. Yeah, I know.
Yeah. So this is religious Toxoplasma. The blasphemy law is religious Toxoplasma.
It is.
It makes a mouse into basically a deranged mouse.
It's basically like what they say, the virus, like what Avijit Roy and we had Rehan Abir on, where they were talking about the virus of faith. These are Bangladeshi bloggers. So in a way, the Toxoplasma is a parasite. So that's weird. So let's get to. I want to actually talk about you're talking about the mob getting together, how easy it is to get them together. Yeah. So usually what happens in these kinds of situations is that in a functioning state, you have some sort of the government has some role in ensuring that rule of law is implemented. Now, and what do you think of the new government of Imran Khan? Now, in the past, for those who don't know, the history of Pakistan has been generally in the most recent decades, it's been these two families, the Bhuttos, like Benazir Bhutto has been prime minister, and then you had Nawaz Sharif, and they kept on alternating. Their governments kept on getting dissolved. There wasn't really a peaceful civilian transfer of power between two democratic governments until very, very recently. And just intermittently, the army has come in and they've taken over. So the army actually has more supreme power than any civilian government. Now, Imran Khan is the first time that you've had a prime minister who is not part of any of these systems.
Let people know that he's been recent prime minister. For people that
he's been recently elected. He was a cricket star. He was a national celebrity, sports celebrity. He is not part of the Sharif family. He's not part of the Bhutto family, and he was not part of the army. Now, he was accused of a lot of things, and I think justifiably so. Sort of appeasing the fundamentalists, wanting to negotiate with the Taliban when the Taliban were committing a lot of atrocities in Pakistan. There were a lot of problematic things about him. Now he has come up and he has initially overseen this process of the Supreme Court, as when the Supreme Court acquitted Asia Bibi. And then after she was acquitted, he has defended the Supreme Court justices from these pronouncements of the Tehreek-e-Labbaik, the Islamic fundamentalist group that want the Supreme Court justices to be killed. He got a lot of praise for that speech, but then within a day or so, he ended up also negotiating with them, with the Islamic fundamentalists, to ensure or to give them assurances that Asia Bibi will not leave the country, or that they will continue to try other aspects of the case and so on. So there's been and some people say that are very disappointed in it. Some people think he's stalling and he's trying to find some time in order for the process to. I'll stop now and I'll let you answer. Where do you think this is going? What do you think about this? The new government, do you think that this has been good? Do you think those accusations of him appeasing the fundamentalists were well-founded? What's your overall take on it?
Well, it was disappointing because it could have been sort of misfounded optimism, but one sort of hoped that Imran would be less less expedient when it came to dealing with the fundamentalists when he's in power, if he actually believed it. If he actually believed in the rule of law, he wouldn't give in like Nawaz Sharif did. But, essentially there's been a complete bend over. The government has completely and absolutely appeased them. And, interestingly, there have been some stories coming out of Pakistan after the appeasement. So just to tell everyone, I'll just say what the appeasement was. The appeasement was that the Tehreek Labbaik, which is the party that champions the blasphemy issue, had a ridiculous demand. Their demand was that the verdict should be reversed.
And that was never going to happen, right?
Well, you can't do that. In a half-civilized state, you can't reverse a verdict and deliver a verdict to someone that's holding you on gunpoint. I mean, you might as well dissolve the courts then.
What? Yeah, but you said in a civilized state. We're talking Pakistan.
No, Pakistan does have Pakistan does have a very rigorous legal system.
Right.
It's imperfect, it's flawed, army. But it's a powerful army. Yeah.
Powerful secular army.
No, yes. To all intents and purposes, it's a secular army, which of course has a lot of religious leanings, but the functioning of the army is a secular army. Yeah. So the thing is that one sort of hoped that Imran Khan would take a firmer stance with them, but he buckled over completely. And his apologists say that, he buckled over to appease them. And eventually he's going to let Asia Bibi go. Yes, he is. But what was up for grabs is not Asia Bibi. What was up for grabs is the narrative. Now, in Pakistan, the narrative that pervades throughout the country on mainstream media is that Asia Bibi is a blasphemer, and she blasphemed, and it's terrible that they've sort of let her go. But the counter narrative, which is that she was tried under a court of law and found to be innocent on the basis of all evidence.
Right.
That narrative has not been put forth by the government, and that's a very important narrative, and that is the only hope we have of defeating this kind of madness, is to put the counter story forward. And over there, the government has run from the field. So after doing that, after they've done that, when I hear that, oh, by the way, you know what, they're actually making arrests, they've arrested 5,000 people. And by the way, after saying to the Tehreek Labbaik that yes, we'll retry Asia, wink, wink, they actually let her go. I'm sorry, that's not good enough for me. You surrendered the narrative completely to them, and like a chicken shit mouse, sort of quietly let her go into the night, as opposed to take on the narrative and say, no, guys, I'm sorry, but there was no evidence. And when there's no evidence, tough luck, go home.
But wouldn't that be inviting? I'm trying to be a devil's advocate here. Like, wouldn't that be inviting? Wouldn't it be like a political suicide? Wouldn't that get all the Muslims, fundamentalists, and everybody that? What's that? Imam Rizvi? Is that his name?
Khadim Rizvi. I am ashamed that I share a name. With him.
He's the guy that, I saw a video of him telling people that the judges should be killed. Their cooks should kill them, or their drivers should kill them. Imran Khan proved to be a child of a Jew, but based on this, and also the previous judge that sentenced the murderer of your father. to death. That judge should also be killed. And the Ummah, the Muslim community, showed weakness not killing him to that judge. So he's putting how come this guy is saying these things about the prime minister, about the military, a lot of the military people, he wants them to be killed. So how come he can say this and he's still free, right? Wouldn't in any other country this imam be arrested as a terrorist?
Even in this country, if it was anybody but an Islamic preacher, Islamic sort of ideologue, or
for saying these things, you would disappeared by now.
Just the opposition party, someone from the opposition party, if they said that the judges or the army chiefs are wajib al-qatl or are mandatory to kill, it would just not. Who would be negotiating with them? Who would be trying to strike a deal with them?
So for us sitting here, it might be easy to say like, oh, why are these people not arrested? But I'm just trying to play devil's advocate. If we were sitting in their shoes, our advisors might be telling us, look, if you do this, you're basically going to start civil war in Pakistan between the Islamists and the government. What would you say to that?
Yeah, but between civil war and complete capitulation, surely there's a middle ground somewhere. I mean, I'm not advocating civil war. But that doesn't mean, complete and absolute bend over capitulation is okay as well. Because hey, look at how much ground we've lost as a country. 5 years ago, the major demand of these very same groups was, when my father was murdered, at the time, the demand was, do not amend the blasphemy law. It's God's law. Don't you dare amend it. That was their demand, right? And okay, what's their demand today? No one's even amending the blasphemy law because this lady, Asia, was tried under the blasphemy law, section 295B and C. And under that law, she was found innocent.
Acquitted,
so what's their demand now? That do not acquit anyone who's accused of this law. Do not let the courts of Pakistan try this law, adjudicate on this law. Give these religious groups the right to adjudicate on this law, i.e. a judicial coup.
Oh no!
So by giving them, by capitulating to them, do you see how much over time space we lose? We go further and further and further back. So I'm not saying gun them down with AK-47s.
Maybe you
but
should.
There has to be a plan.
Armin, out.
Armin.
We're talking about terrorists. I'm not talking about ordinary Muslims. We're talking about terrorists, aren't we?
Yeah.
You're doing them a favor, sending them to heaven. No, but the point is,
it's like I don't know.
Let's give them the gift.
Taking them on.
I'm just asking. I don't know.
Sorry, go ahead, Shaan.
How to punish a masochist?
What?
I know. That's right. These are people. You say that they look down the barrel of a gun and they see paradise. Well, on one hand you could give it to them. On the other, you can't do anything. But okay, so let me frame what we're talking about.
But is that too extreme to say? Isn't it like in a country, if there's a group of people, I'm not like masses of people, right? But if isn't this a declaration of war? If somebody comes and says like, hey, we should kill the prime minister and the head of the armies, wouldn't this be, and wouldn't they go attack this? Like am I saying something
and for the audience, I just want to say that this is actually quite real. And you know this, when you said that Khadim Rizvi is telling the cooks and drivers of these judges to kill them. That's what happened to your dad. I mean, his own bodyguard was the one who ended up killing him.
So,
let me.
Sorry, go ahead.
Yeah.
Go ahead.
No, sorry, Armin.
I just don't want to come an anti-humanist here. I'm just wondering, wouldn't this already be a declaration of war? Wouldn't you at least go attack these groups? Not their followers, obviously, because their followers are just brainwashed sheep. But wouldn't you at least go find the leaders and just arrest them? I'm very much for freedom and letting people express their views, no matter how barbaric and disgusting they are. But then when somebody actually declares advocates an act of violence or declares war on you, then
A rebellion.
Wouldn't any
Sedition.
government go and arrest them? Yeah, or at least attack them? Or something?
Well, my view is that, look, this goes to the heart of a very basic problem in the Muslim world. In most modern states, in the Muslim world, there's a contradiction. I mean, we've got modern states, but there is a consciousness that has not sort of come to that level. Now, there are two rival competing worldviews. So there's a battle of ideas in Pakistan and in much the rest of the Muslim world of how people in Pakistan see themselves. On the one hand, they see themselves as part of the army of God.
Mm-hmm.
On the other hand, there are people who see themselves as citizens of a nation state. There are also a lot of overlaps between that because there's a lot of cognitive dissonance. So people see themselves as the army of God and part of a nation state. So what is the army of God hypothesis? Typical army of God hypothesis is Pakistan was made for Islam. Our duty is to impose Sharia law. Democracy and constitution are Western liberal impositions. It's the puppets of the West that wants to give us democracy. We actually believe in Sharia law. And basically what they want to do is redefine the social contract that citizens have with the state because they do not see themselves as part of a nation state. So it's when you think like that you make outlandish, ridiculous things like if the judiciary has passed a verdict that does not sort of suit your religious belief system, behead them. Now, interestingly, sort of what these people are also doing, and the reason why they are very powerful is it's easy for us to dismiss them because they score very poorly on the electoral rolls. They get 5 to 10% of the votes at best. So we tend to falsely dismiss them. But where they are overwhelmingly more powerful is cultural domination. They culturally dominate much more than their numbers.
How?
Well, first of all, like I said, number one, the unchecked power of the blasphemy law, the unchecked power of the religious mandate. The sort of bid for cultural domination they have in our society, where we had a kite flying festival called Basant. They put an end to that, saying that this is a non-Islamic thing. Valentine's Day is often celebrated in a small section of society, admittedly, but they put an end to that, saying that is un-Islamic. There was a peace concert at a certain elite school in Pakistan last year where they were going to sing John Lennon's song Imagine for peace, and that came out on social media, and they put an end to that, saying Imagine is an atheist song. The interaction between genders in universities, whether you can have a marathon in a country or not.
It bleeds into everything.
What women can wear on TV, what is permissible, what is not. Their control over this space is far, far more than their electoral strength. And why is it so much more? Because they have demonstrated that they will kill you if you don't agree with them.
That usually helps.
This is kind of what we're getting to, and that's how religion survived. I mean, when you have something that's fundamentally irrational and goes on the premise of loyalty or goes on the premise of faith rather than reason or democracy, then it necessarily has to have something like a blasphemy law or its equivalent. But let's say that right now you have this situation where Asia Bibi is acquitted. All of these mobs came out into the streets. They're calling for the deaths of these Supreme Court judges. They're burning, all along the motorway, the highway over there. They're burning vehicles. They're burning tires. They're going around and fighting with people. People are dying. Schools are closed. Private schools are closed. Colleges are closed. Everybody, the whole place is at a standstill because of these guys who, again, as you said, don't necessarily have electoral strength, but they have the ability to essentially paralyze an entire nation.
They've got force multipliers.
Yeah, they do. So what should, or what are the options that an Imran Khan has in a situation like that? What is something that he potentially could have done aside from striking this deal? And by the way, I'm not defending Imran Khan or the deal.
I think the most important thing he could have done is not lost the narrative. Someone should be there to say that, listen, the question of whether Asia is innocent or guilty is settled. FYI. Someone needed to be saying that. I mean, they shut down all media from talking about it, which is basically running from the hills, running from.
Yes, I was going to that. I went to the news website, the news.com.pk website. Nothing on the story the entire time it was happening. I mean, it got shut. That was incredible. It's sort of like how Fox News never covers any of the Trump scandals. At worst, actually. So the government actually shut down the press from talking about it.
They said don't talk about it, right? But at the same time, you've got the other side talking about it on certain shows, where you've got this bearded Maulana, sort of, who turns up and sort of comes in, sort of referring to Asia as Asia Maluna, which is Asia the blasphemer. So Asia the blasphemer said this, and Asia the blasphemer said that, and he's actually presuming to give a legal argument. And that is the only legal dialogue that mainstream Pakistan had. Now the thing is that for Imran Khan, for the government, that is the surrender. I mean, I don't care what deals you sign. I don't care whether, okay, fine, the damaged property can be repaired. But this narrative that you lost will never be recovered. Now, in the public consciousness, the narrative that has been said is that Asia was a blasphemer and the evil government has freed her.
Right. Yeah. So, I guess I'm thinking. Okay. So, that's fair enough. Now, moving on. What do you think is when they did this, they struck this deal and they said that Asia will not be put on the exit, or at least they won't oppose any attempts of anybody to try and put Asia on the exit control list. Correct me if I'm wrong. So they did this so to prevent her from leaving the country, even though she's completely acquitted. She's innocent.
By the highest court in the country, she's been acquitted.
She has been acquitted, but at the same time, for some reason, for no basis at all now, they're saying that they want her on the exit control list, and the government's saying, "Oh, okay, well, maybe we'll consider that." But so you have this, and you also mentioned earlier on that Asia's she's out. It takes a while to get a passport. It takes a while to get out of the country, and so on. Is it possible that they did this to buy time and keep the country peaceful?
Yeah, sure. Of course they did. But at the cost of what?
Well, I mean, the cost of the idea that, okay, this is temporary now, but eventually again, I'm playing devil's advocate here, but the laugh will be on them, right? Because she's going to leave the country, someone's going to find out, or she's up in Canada, she's in the Netherlands, or wherever she is, and then these guys, they won't know what happened because they thought that they'd...
No, but what were your objectives as a government? If your objective was to get Asia out quietly, then you didn't have to get into this negotiation process. You could have just gotten Asia out. But if your objective was to win the mind space, this was a battle for mind space, frankly.
Yeah. The government could get a passport made for her overnight, essentially.
Yeah, of course. I mean that the militants, not the militants, the Tehreek-Labbaik couldn't have done anything. They are not as strong as the state. She's under state protection. So basically, what was up for grabs was the narrative, whether the rules of the game. Can you do this with a court verdict you don't like? Can you bring the country to a standstill, claim that it's against Islam, and based on that, demand a retrial at the barrel of a gun? Is that fair play or not? So they've established that it's okay. So it's absolute surrender, no different from the previous government, which actually paid off the same groups when they did something similar a year ago.
What would happen if she leaves? First of all, are you optimistic that she's going to leave?
Oh, she's going to leave 100%. Yeah,
100%. And what?
Yeah, that's what I mean.
And what will happen? Are there going to be riots again in the street? These people are going to lose their minds?
No, they won't, because I think they played their hand. You need a lot of political capital to get people out on the street, and you can do it once, and then you can do it again a year later. You can't sort of 3 days later say, okay, all right, chaps, back to go. Because even the people out on the street have some lives. They've got some. and
doesn't look like it, but yeah.
Yeah, it doesn't look, but yeah. But if you've brought them to the point of primal rage and then said, okay, go home, then you can't bring them out a few days again. So there'll be some demonstrations here and there, but you won't see the whole country set on fire. So basically, Ali is right that the government sort of managed to quell a situation. But is that the best they were aiming for? To quell a situation that essentially it means that the Tehreek-e-Labbaik remains in charge because they created the situation. They control the narrative. The best that the government could do is deflate that anger and that violence.
Yeah.
And if that's the best that we can expect of the state, I'm sorry, that's not good enough. That's just not good enough.
And now they feel emboldened, that they could demand such things, that they can get away with saying stuff like making threats against the most powerful forces in the government, and they're still free. So I think that's going to encourage them to go to do the same.
Yeah, look, like
they prove their authority.
Look, here's the thing. Asia has been found innocent, and Asia has left the country. But the victory is for the Tehreek-e-Labbaik. They have gained space. They have won.
Right. Based on this, they might actually gain a lot more followers because a lot of Muslims like the strong people, whoever has the highest authority or the highest power. And saying a leader like this managed to get away with so much might encourage a lot more support for him, no?
Oh, yeah. It's not just Muslims. There's a current of nihilism across the world. You see this in Myanmar. You see this in the United States. Right-wing leaders are coming to power all over Europe. India, especially the rise of the BJP. So there's a worldwide sweep towards nihilism, which is rebelling essentially against an existing political structure. And in Pakistan specifically, you add to that a tremendous amount of disenfranchisement, lack of opportunities, and most importantly, the marketplace of ideas is absolutely empty. There are no progressive ideas out for grabs. So like I was saying, there are two. The war of ideas is between the army of God at one hand and to be a respectable citizen of the nation state. Now, what does that give you to be a respectable citizen of the nation state? Are you really a stakeholder in the economic prosperity of the country? Not really. All economic prosperity over the last 20 years has only increased the divisions of wealth. The average person probably has it harder today than he did 10 or 20 years ago. What about the most important thing what does it mean to be human? Thrill, excitement, purpose. Joining the army of God gives you much more of that. Than sort of joining the nation state narrative. Right. So the sort of inclusive narrative that creating a nation state with law-abiding citizens is taking a tremendous battering in Pakistan.
Okay, so
By the way, I want to apologize to the people in the for my I had to move because of a lot of the death threats that I'm getting, and I don't know what's happening with my setting, but it seemed like I have a lot of audio issues.
Yeah, I was just going to mention after Shaan finished that there's an issue. Apologies for this audio thing because it seems like you're very loud and saturated for a second, and then it comes down. So anyway,
apologize for that. I'll try to figure it out. It's just a new environment.
I'll figure it out, and and I think it's picking out a lot of other sounds too. But anyway, Shaan, we have about the time just whizzed past, and you should come on here and we should talk more. And also, if you ever want to start a podcast, I think you should. I think it'll be actually.
Yeah. If I could just say, yes, I am going to start a podcast, but also what I'm. You guys know I'm out here in Toronto. Ali, so are you. On the 15th, I'm holding an event at City Hall to essentially do something which I think the world needs, which is, we need to talk about the blasphemy law. And I hope that anyone listening in Toronto is going to be there. And most importantly, what I tell most people listening is that don't have anyone tell you that you can't talk about anything. Even if it's on the back of the divine command theory, and even if you're an ardent believer, you still cannot be told by someone that you can't talk about something. And one thing that we've repeatedly been told that we can't talk about are blasphemy laws, specifically Pakistan's blasphemy laws. And I really, really think that these need to be spoken about. We really do need to speak about them. And we need to realize that we live in a new world where everyone has a voice. Being silent is a matter of your personal choice, and shame on us if we don't enter the great dialogues of our time. So I think this is a great time to take the issue of the blasphemy law and just talk about it. And most importantly, that if there are any opponents, to my view, as in proponents of the blasphemy law, I will respect your opinion completely if you will articulate it to me, but I will not be told that I can't talk about it. Because if that is the best way that you can win an argument, I'm sorry, but you have not won an argument.
So are you hopeful?
Yeah,
are you optimistic or pessimistic about Pakistan's future and blasphemy laws in Pakistan?
Well, I'm pessimistic in the short run. I'm optimistic in the medium run because the world is a global village. Pakistan is not an island unto itself. And the kind of economic development going on in Pakistan is very closely now linked to other regions. And this kind of madness, these mad, barbaric, black, inhumane, illogical, ridiculous, lunatic laws like 295C have to go if Pakistan has to become part of the sort of global community of civilized nations. There's no other choice. For economic imperatives, for social imperatives, and for diplomatic imperatives, this law has to go. Now the question is, how does it go? And most importantly, what part do we all play in seeing it out the door?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I think that's very well said, and that's the question. So I'm going to, we have about 12 minutes. I wanted to get to some of the patron comments. There are a couple people have really enjoyed and have a lot of appreciation for you, Shaan. There's Azib Michael is saying that Shaan is wajibul cuddle. That's Cuddle. So very clearly, I think that there's a lot of those. Yeah.
Thank you. I'm touched.
Yeah, I know.
Cuddle right back.
And then Muskal is saying Shaan is a sort of person we need more of in society. Abdullah Samir has said that you're an amazing guest. So really, thank you. I mean, it seems like the audience, that our audience who watches us, has really, really appreciated what you've had to say over here. So thank you for doing that. I'm not seeing a whole lot of questions. Just seeing a lot of comments. People having.
There were a lot of questions above. If you want to scroll all the way up.
Yeah, but I can't really go. For some reason, it's not letting me. go up beyond.
If you guys want to ask the questions again that we didn't answer, feel free to ask it now. Somebody is saying, I can't imagine openly insulting Muhammad in Pakistan and staying alive. That's pretty safe to say, right? Like if anybody is found out to openly insult Muhammad in Pakistan, that's basically a death sentence right there, like, right?
Put it like this. The accusation of doing so, even if there isn't a whiff of evidence that you've done so, is a death sentence. Yeah. So if someone actually does so, ramp it up 50 times over. Yeah.
Right.
So, I wanted to, there are people who have just been controversial and who've just discussed certain things and that are not necessarily even religious, like Raza Rumi. Shaan, you know him, I know him.
Oh, yeah, very well. Yeah.
So there was an assassination attempt on him where he was shot. And I think if I remember correctly, his driver was actually killed and he survived somehow. So, these are people who they're not overt atheists. They're not overt, anything. They're just, it's a tough thing out there. Everything is very vague. You just don't know what you'll get accused of, why you'll get accused. As you said, that nobody even knows what the crime is in a lot of these cases.
Yeah, Raza is probably the most curious case because he said nothing controversial. He only spoke about a pluralistic society and generally a tolerant society. And for someone like that to be targeted, just shows how low the bar is in terms of what can be said.
And you look at Malala Yousafzai. 14-year-old kid shot in the head for girl saying that girls should be able to go to school.
Oh yeah.
So the bar is very, very low. This is a tough thing. So how do you think, I know this is all speculation, but knowing your father, how do you think that he would have felt right now and about everything that's happened recently?
This is a vindication. A further vindication of what he stood for, and of his worldview, and if you read the judgment of the case that basically finds her innocent, they say exactly the same thing as what my father said. Right. So this is yet another vindication of his stance. And I've said this before, that if he was looking down, he would be a happy man. And I was asked when Mumtaz Qadri was hung, there was a lot of talk saying that, justice has been done. At last justice had been done. And I said very clearly, justice has not been done. This man is not my father's enemy. He's not my. Justice has not been done. Justice will be done when Asia Bibi is released. But even greater justice will be done when this horrible law is repealed. Because let's not forget, Asia Bibi was a poster child of blasphemy. And as happy as we are for her release, there are about 150 to 200 other people in Pakistan right now on blasphemy charges. Yeah. Many of them underage children, some of them mentally challenged, some of them physically challenged. Half of them are from the minority community. All of them are from the lowest rungs of society. The poorest of the poor, the weakest of the weak, farm hands, gutter cleaners, sewerage and floor sweepers, petty fruit sellers. The weakest sections of society have been targeted by this law. And if nothing else I said sort of convinces you, just the fact that there's a law that is systematically targeting the weakest of a society should tell you that law is inherently unjust. And the only purpose, the only raison d'etre for a law is that it delivers justice in a society. If it has been demonstrably proved that a law sort of reduces the amount of justice and increases the injustice in a society, such a law is a non-law. It's an illegitimate law. It is not a law. It is an ulcer on the law books and must be removed The sooner the better before that damn cancer spreads.
I'm so glad you mentioned this, and I'm so ashamed that we didn't think about asking this ourselves. There are so many other people that are in jail right now for the same crime, and not only we forgot to mention them. I think once Bibi is out of Pakistan, everybody's going to forget. Nobody talks about them, and and they're going to go completely ignored. I mean, this case got a lot of attention, but they are all going to be completely forgotten once this.
That'll be a crying shame if that happens. That will be a crying shame, and that is why I'm starting my podcasts and I'm starting my talk tracks. That we cannot rest until this law is repealed, and we cannot think that just because Asia is free, the suffering has ended. The suffering is continuing. Nabil Masih, a 16-year-old illiterate boy, a son of a soldier, is now incarcerated. Well, he's charged with the blasphemy law. He's in jail. And do you know what his crime was? He liked an offensive or a supposedly offensive Facebook post. Liked it. That's all he did. He didn't author it. He didn't even author it. He liked it.
And where can people find this podcast of yours, by the way?
No, I've yet to start it.
Okay, so where is there anywhere that people can follow you? So when you start it, they can get
my Twitter and Facebook social medias. If you follow me on them now, I'm going to start podcasting. And most importantly, what I wanted to say to everyone is that we brought about a lot of real change by highlighting cases of blasphemy or cases of religious exploitation in Pakistan, and raised a storm whereby a lot of pressure has been put on officials to intervene. And we have saved a lot of people that way. So, the important thing is, don't let anyone tell you that being active on social media is not effective. That's a lie. Oh, yeah. Social media is very, very effective. It shames people into action, especially in Pakistan. The most powerful sort of method of getting the government to act is to shame them. So the best thing you can do about these things is to join in, blog about it, write about it. If nothing else, share it. If nothing else, like it. Right. Join our petitions. And
so at least the Tariq Labek folks and all the Islamic fundamentalists are using it to a great advantage too. So we definitely do need to push back. I think that's a really important point. I mean, the downfall of Hosni Mubarak in Egypt was because of a social media event.
Oh yeah.
So I mean, these are extremely, especially in that part of the world. It's very, very important.
See, up till 30 years ago, you had to be someone important to have a voice. Not 30, even 5 years, 10 years ago. Everyone has a voice today. It's your choice whether you use it or not.
So actually, somebody in the live chat did ask how can we stop the radicalization of young people in Pakistan, and I think reaching them through social media and podcasts, that's basically the way. I mean,
well, I say, look, you've got we have people at the front lines who are fighting this war, which is people of the Christian community. We have lawyers who are defending the people like Nabil. We've got the victims of the blasphemy law who are fighting for their lives. Support them. Support them financially. Support them in terms of advocacy. Stand up for them and visibly stand up for them. Don't be ashamed of it. Get your loved ones to stand up for them. Even if it's, when someone gets accused of blasphemy in Pakistan, their family goes hungry because their source of income dries up. So not only is Nabil Masih in jail, but his family is starving because they can't, his father can't go to his job anymore. I mean, the family of a blasphemer is also seen as a blasphemer. If nothing else, donate $1 a month directly to go into the pocket of that family and actually do something about the problem directly by supporting the people who are at the front lines, the people who are fighting this war for you.
I always bring up this whenever people say, well, why do you do what you do? And I think that this applies to all of us. And this, to borrow some social justice lingo, is to check your privilege, in the sense that I am very, very privileged. I have, we have, Armin and I both have friends, like Raif Badawi, who, he's in jail, he's been flogged, he's been fined, he's been separated from his children for 6 years, for doing exactly what we are able to do here now. And when we do it, we get book deals. And when he did it, he gets jailed and he gets flogged. So as long as situation, or in Bangladesh, people get hacked to death on the street, or Mashal Khan gets lynched on a university campus, or in the case of your father, he got murdered. So this is something that, for me, it's almost a moral obligation to speak out, having come from there and having been through this, and having people who are so close to me, in a sense, seeing them go through these things. I feel that it would almost be criminal if I didn't, with all of this privilege and being able to do this, if I didn't.
Here's the thing, Ali, you're not a drop in the ocean.
Oh yeah.
You can bring about very, very real change in people's lives, and you can sort of like reverse situations if people jump in now. I mean, that's the power of social media.
Yeah, I agree. Okay,
so two more questions. First, people want to know what your Twitter handle is. Second, somebody's asking, what do you think is going to happen after this blasphemy case? Another question, Ali isn't, otherwise Armin would have moved. I don't know what that question is. Yeah, just those two questions.
Okay, so guys, my Twitter handle is my name, Shaan Taseer, ShaanTaseer. I think there's only one of me. And the same on Facebook. The other thing is, what's going to happen after this blasphemy case? Look, this blasphemy case is over. Now, it's just a matter of logistics when Asia leaves the country. But we have to champion a new blasphemy cause. We have to save someone else from the gallows. There is Junaid Hafiz, professor of a university in central sort of Punjab, whose crime is essentially having a conversation over evolution and questioning some dogmas. That's it. That's his crime. It's the only reason the Asia Bibi case was heard is because it's prominent. No one knows about Junaid Hafiz. We have to make a noise around the world about Junaid Hafiz.
Why did that one get prominent?
Because of my father.
Because because of what happened. So, I mean, this just goes to show what happens when you speak out because of it. But yeah, you're right. At one point, I think when Mumtaz Qadri was hung, when he was executed, people said, was justice served? And you said, no, it won't be served until Asia is free. And I guess now we're at the point that, yes, it won't really fully be served until the law goes, right? Yeah. And then all the Junaid Hafizes and the Nabils and all of these other people are also, they also are acquitted in the same.
But I think what we have to realize is that this kind of ridiculous law is not just an affront to any conscionable Pakistani. It's an affront to any conscionable citizen of the world. Just like apartheid wasn't an internal affair for South Africa in the 1980s. If you're a citizen of the world in the 1980s, well, shame on you if you didn't disagree.
That's right. It's absolutely global. Yeah, this is something that should be concerning to everybody.
This has to go around the world. People have to hear about the blasphemy laws, what it's doing, and the fact that it's an absolute affront to humanity.
Yeah. Here's another good question. How do we shut down the radicalizing madrasahs? And I'm going to add my question on top of that. Is Saudi Arabia still funding these madrasas? I mean, okay. So if oil money is also screwing over Pakistan, so if Saudi Arabia revenues, oil revenue, and all the other revenue falls, this also helps Pakistan, move past it. Like at least it will stop the funding for madrasas, right, in Pakistan, right? Wouldn't it?
Well, the utopia is never going to arrive where all of Pakistan's problems will be solved. even if this problem is never solved. The issue of madrasahs are solved to a global geopolitical issue. Saudi oil money, the prominent position of Saudi Arabia in the world, and of course their sort of lunatic bent towards Wahhabism and their desire to sort of like spread ultra orthodox Islam. These issues may not be solved in our lifetime, but my question is, I'm not even going there. Can we save a life? Can we save Junaid Hafiz's life? I'm only asking for that. Just give me that.
Yeah.
You want to get rid of madrasas? You're aiming high. Can we save one life?
Right.
And set example.
That's a very good point, because a lot of people want an all or none game. Like, if we do this, there's still good Pakistan is still going to be like this. There's still going to be people that. Yeah, but this is not about fixing everything. If you save one life, it makes everything worth it. You might not have fixed the whole planet, but for that one person, you gave them.
It means the world to them, yeah.
It means that's a whole world for that one person, right?
No, not just that one person. Millions today are celebrating because of Asia. I mean, she has brought joy and happiness to millions, and she's going to become an icon. And you know that her victory is a symbolic victory against dogma,
right?
And she will be remembered in this century. Like Malala is not about one girl, Mukhtar Mai is not about one girl, but one person who pushes back is sort of the effect psychologically is amplified across millions. So I would say that my father saved Asia Bibi by highlighting her case. We will do his memory the greatest service by saving someone else. Yeah. And how will we do that is really raising this issue, embarrassing the government into listening to cases.
Mm-hmm.
Grant is saying, thank you for your courage, Shaan. Love from Canada. There was another person that mentioned if you could list all the people in prison. Oh, Steve is saying, can you list the names of those convicted in prison for blasphemy in a YouTube video? Maybe in one of your podcasts, you
can do that. Yeah.
And also Muskiel is asking, how can we in the West help regarding blasphemy laws?
Oh yeah, very simple. Very, very simple. I'm going to give you like 4 or 5 things you can do. Okay. Pakistan is very, very susceptible to foreign pressure. If you write about it, if you can blog, and I don't mean blog in the New York Times, if you can blog anywhere, because remember, this is the age of social media. If you raise the issue with your member of parliament, and take a letter to them. You take a letter to your member of parliament and you explain this huge human rights injustice, which is an affront to humanity. It's taking place in your world while you're alive. That's enough to insult you. I don't care about borders. Doesn't matter which country it's happening in. You can take this case to your member of parliament and force them to bring it up in the assembly.
Or in the US, your senator, your representative.
If 20 people do that, then the name of Nabil Masih or Junaid Hafiz will be spoken about, and the government of Pakistan is extremely, extremely susceptible to foreign pressure. The other thing is, if you write to the Pakistan Consul General and ask him to deliver this message to the Prime Minister of Pakistan that, hey, what are you doing? This is going on. How can this happen on your watch? Not only do it, but take a photograph of when you do it, and take that letter, take a photograph of it, upload it on social media, tag all the right people. Don't do something quietly in silence. Do it loudly and proudly. Do it so that everyone can see it. Tell 20 other people to do it. Make it a challenge. Say that, can you take the Junaid Hafiz challenge? I did this. I wrote a letter. I contacted my MP. Are you going to do the same? If 20 people follow you, it's going to become something. It's going to become a story that someone will pick up. If not a major newspaper, regional paper will pick it up. It will galvanize. It will become something that people start talking about. And that is when change starts. And we have the social media world that we live in. These are the advantages we have. We should take advantage of them.
Actually, I'm going to make that even more powerful. If you do that and if you tag me or Ali in a tweet that you with the picture like that, then I'll retweet it on Atheist Republic, which we have a lot of followers. I'll post those pictures. If you write something to your Congress or your member of Parliament, we'll send it to us on Twitter. tag us. I'll post that on our Facebook page. It has 2 million followers there. Download it and post it there. So it doesn't matter if you have small number of followers. We'll try to amplify your voice if you do that.
Yeah. Thank you, Armin. We are all in this together.
Thank you.
Yeah, we are. Shaan, thank you so much for joining us, and you've got to come back because awesome. 2 hours went by. This was a blast. So, and good luck with the podcast, the event for everybody. It's
let
on
us
the 15th.
know when the podcast is up, so we could promote it to our audience as well.
Yeah,
thank you guys. I will do so, certainly.
Yeah. So it's really good, and stay safe. Keep doing those interviews. Keep speaking out, and obviously we'll see each other soon. So
all right, I'm going to start streaming. Just 1 second. Thank you, everybody.
Stay there.
Chat. London, Fidel, Tony, you guys are awesome. Southern California, Mars, Beach, Mike, everybody, Muscal, Soraya, everybody else. Love you guys, and thank you so much for your questions. Sorry about the audio issues. I'll make sure I'll figure it out for next episode. Live long and prosper from Mike. B just saying thank you, Shaan, Ali, and Armin. Thank you. Bye.
The secular jihadists have been made possible thanks to the Illuminati and the covert support of Israel and the CIA. That's what we have been told, but we haven't received our checks yet. If you like what we do, please support us. Share the podcast with your friends. Write and tweet us with topic and guest suggestions. Or head over to secularjihadist.com and give $1 or more for exclusive access to live video. Have your questions read and answered on the air, and more. Till next time, may the flying spaghetti monster be with you.